What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar going into tomorrow, some big things that are going to affect the markets, and also what's happening with Jerome Powell's speech for today. Well, it's not really a speech, but just like an interview on 60 Minutes. So I'm going to break down how all of this could affect the markets, what's happening to the market going into tomorrow, and what my price predictions are for all these different tickers. But before I begin the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's talk about what's going on with the markets. So right now, Tesla's in this liquidity zone. We saw some buyers kind of stepping in defending Tesla on Friday, but then Tesla ended up getting this small rejection of this resistance. So I want to break down what's going to happen to Tesla moving forward and what's happening with SPY over the next couple of minutes. But let's first talk about Jerome Powell and what's happening for today. So Jerome Powell is basically not just giving a typical speech. It's more like an interview where he's going to have a conversation about interest rates, inflation, the economy, and the Fed's current monetary policy. Now, what he says could affect the markets. So you want to be very, very careful. Now, I honestly believe that Jerome Powell is going to be a little careful, not say the most outlandish things to cause insane moves, but sometimes you just want to be prepared just to be safe. If Jerome Powell tries to trivialize the situation about the high interest rates, the recessionary talks and stuff like that, that's going to be a little positive for the markets. But if he has the same demeanor as what he had on Wednesday when he was speaking at the FOMC meeting, he could still cause the market to pull back. So you want to be very careful with what he says. If he's asked about the cuts, if he says anything about cuts that may not be coming in March or anything like that, that could also be a little negative. So just be very careful. But here's the thing about the markets that's very important. What does history tell us about the markets? Let me show you something. So SPY sold off very hard on Wednesday. Do you guys remember that Jerome Powell was giving his speech? He caused this big rug pull. But then what happened on Thursday? The market got bought right back up. On Friday, we got a nice short squeeze as we predicted. So the point I'm trying to make is that the trend in the market is still favoring the bulls. The market could see some downside thanks to Powell, and it does look like we might retrace a bit, especially as we open on Monday. But right now, history tells us that the buyers are still going to try to step in. They're going to likely try to still defend their positions. So there's a very good chance that's going to happen even after Jerome Powell's speech. So we'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. So keep that in the back of your mind. For other things affecting the markets for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, February 5th. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI report. This is important for our current gauge of the economy. What's even more important is going to be the services data. So then at 10 o'clock a.m. or 30 minutes after the market opens, once again in Eastern Standard Time, at 10 a.m., we have more services data coming out. Services PMI is going to be important to understand the sector, which is a big part of our economy, not to mention services prices and services new orders, which are two very, very important components of that. So services new orders is very forward looking data. This is important for inflation. The Fed is going to be watching this, so make sure you watch this very, very carefully. So watch for volatility 15 minutes and 30 minutes after the market opens tomorrow. The ISM services data could cause some moves as well, so watch for that. When it comes to earnings, on Monday we have Caterpillar and McDonald's announcing their earnings, then Palantir after the market closes. So watch for all of that. On Tuesday we have Snap and just a couple of others, very, very minor stuff. Wednesday is when things become serious since we have Alibaba in the morning before the market opens alongside Uber. And then we have more retail, not to mention after market close, we have PayPal and Disney. Disney is going to be very important. PepsiCo is going to be another important one on Friday. But besides that, everything else is just kind of minor compared to what we saw last week when we had the big tech earnings. Nothing that serious is going to be coming out for it this week. And things are kind of minor for tomorrow. So I'm not too worried about McDonald's or things like that. When it comes to the way it affects the whole market. For the Fear and Greed Index, there are some things I want to warn you guys about. So right now, the market is quite greedy. The overall indicators still favor the bulls. They're still telling us that the bulls are still alive. They're still stepping in and defending their positions. The market's still at extreme greed right now in market momentum. The VIX basically, and this is the market volatility index, which is made up of the VIX, it's on neutral because the VIX is kind of slow to react. The VIX came crashing, not crashing, came up very hard once Jerome Powell gave his speech, and now it's been coming back down, but it's still at the neutral position. And then finally, the put and call positioning is at extreme greed. So what does all of this mean? Basically, the market is favoring the bulls right now. The bulls are still defending, they're still buying things up, they still have control. But these indicators are at extremes, which tends to suggest that the market's in a topping process, and this tends to give us warnings that you want to be very careful when you see things like this. So right now, things are very greedy. People are buying up like crazy. I just want to warn you to be careful at these high levels. That's what the indicators suggest, at least from the way I interpret them. Be very careful as SPY is approaching 500, as Tesla's gonna try to rebound. Be very, very careful in a market like this, guys, because things could shift and go south very quickly. Now, when it comes to news affecting Tesla, I want to call out something very important. There's these new headlines coming out about Elon Musk. Basically, there's people out there saying that, let me just close that. Sorry about that, guys. Right here, just pay attention to the center right here. Elon Musk was told to go to rehab by concerned friends because of something that was going on. I'm not going to say what it was. You guys could just read it right over here. This is very serious, and it's not good for any company to hear news about this. So this could be a little negative for Tesla, but this is not making like all the headlines for now. I'm just seeing some major headlines mentioning this. So we'll see if anything happens tomorrow. But don't forget about the news aspect for tomorrow. There hasn't really been much news for Tesla. There might be more coming out tomorrow morning, so watch out for that. I'll be talking about that anyways. We'll also be listening to what Jerome Powell says. That's going to have a bigger effect on Tesla. This is how the inventory levels, excuse me, guys, I apologize. Inventory levels are looking for Tesla right now. The Model Y saw a big increase in inventories as production is outweighing the amount of sales for now, but it's starting to drop just a little bit. Everything else has very, very low quantities of inventory, which is still showing some good demand. Also, it has to do with production. But right now, the Model Y is something that's a little concerning. Let's see if we could get more sales. If anything, the Model Y does make up the majority of Tesla sales. Let's hope that we get more and more sales as time goes on, and we'll see if Tesla does anything about that. Wedbush is saying Tesla's going to outperform the market. Baird is saying the same thing. And on top of this, the price ratio is a little down, but it's trying to bounce and trying to base at this level, which means that Tesla might not be sinking as hard as it was earlier. Mondays tend to be green, 53% of the time historically, but the way we open will depend on Powell and other factors. Now, February is a weak month for Tesla, so you want to be careful as we approach the later days of this month. Be very careful for the markets. It's historically not the strongest of times. Don't forget that Tesla tends to be more volatile at 11 o'clock a.m., a little bit more volatile at noon, but it's not as crazy. And then around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we tend to see high volatility. So 11 a.m. and 2 is usually when we see Tesla making bigger moves. The volume is at 111 million, so a little bit below average, and the short volume is starting to drop a little bit. So it's kind of like stable right now. We're not seeing excessive shorting or anything too crazy. We're kind of stuck right now. So what do I see for the charts? What is my biggest uh, prediction, if anything? So let's first go over the bullish case. If you want to be bullish on Tesla, you want to see it break above this yellow resistance right here and make our way back above the 190 area, 190.43 to 190.5. If we break that, we're going to be looking for a bigger push to the upside. If we're bearish on Tesla, you want to see this thing basically lose 184. If we lose that, 182.5 is next and 180. What do I think Tesla's going to do? What is my prediction? Now, I think that Jerome Powell is going to be one factor when he gives his speech, not to mention the current technicals. I think that Tesla might turn here. We're going to be looking for a very healthy retracement. I think the market might actually pull back a little bit when we open up on Monday. But just like what happened on Thursday, we might see some buyers try to defend the market. So I don't think the market's going to just crash immediately. It also depends on what Powell says, but I don't expect that. I think that we might retrace a bit and then we might see something different. Tesla's 0.618 retracement happens to be in the 184s. So I think there's a good chance if Tesla's going to kind of like downtrend just a bit from here, we might grab liquidity in the 184 range and try to bounce off that, then trade sideways after that. Now, this could vary depending on the news and Jerome Powell, but my best prediction is a little retracement that's coming to the markets. Then some buyers might try to defend and hold our positions, at least for now. So you want to be very careful. We'll also see what Jerome Powell causes, but I think that's the most likely possibility, a little retracement and a bounce and sideways price action for kind of like flat close. What about for SPY? What's going on with SPY thus far? SPY, in my opinion, it looks to me like it might retrace just a little bit. Our 4-hour 5 EMAs at 492. We also have this breakout zone to be watching for. So we've been respecting an uptrend. We're still bullish overall, but I do anticipate a little retracement that's coming. I think that SPY is going to test this support right here in this 192 range, depending on the timing. And if we lose this, we also have the breakout zone at this 491.5 area. The 491.5 area is going to be coming next. So we're going to be watching 492. If we lose this, 491.5 is likely going to come. We'll have to see if buyers try to defend this right here. If we bounce off this support zone right here, we're going to be pushing our way back up to 495 plus and pushing back up. If we lose 491.5, it's going to start sinking back down towards these lower levels. We could even see 489 again. What do I think it's going to do? I think it's going to retrace a little bit. Look for a retracement temporarily, and then we'll see if buyers defend these positions. Historically, they do tend to defend even after Jerome Powell's speeches. So we might see a little retracement and maybe a bounce here. So watch that very, very carefully. I think we're going to be testing between 491 and 492 and then bounce off that and trade sideways. That's my prediction, but watch for the retracement. Let's see if buyers step in just to be safe. For the QQQ, it's the same thing basically. We have this tight resistance at 429. We managed to just barely get above it towards 430 before rejecting. I think it's going to retrace a little bit towards this yellow trend line at 427. If we lose that, we could technically drop towards 425, but I'm not really counting on it. I anticipate a little retracement coming towards 427 at the very least, maybe 425, depending on where buyers step in. But I see a retracement coming thanks to Powell, so expect it on the QQQ and watch to see if we get a bounce off either 427 or 425. So watch that very carefully, a little drop and then a bounce. I think that's most likely what's going to happen, especially thanks to Powell and how the buyers are still defending these markets. For Nvidia has tight resistance at this yellow resistance. This is our previous trend line based off historical data. Coming back down, we're going to be looking at 658 and then 654 is two supports, followed by 652. Those are three supports to be watching for, actually. I think Nvidia is going to retrace towards 658 and eventually their breakout area at 654. But then we might see some buyers try to kind of like defend at this position and come back up. So look for a little retracement, watch and see how well we hold, and look and see if we get a bounce off the breakout zone. We'll be watching that very, very carefully. I think Nvidia might retrace a little bit. Powell might cause a small little retracement, but the buyers might defend Nvidia and we might get pushed right back up into this range right here. Look for a little retracement and a bounce. That's the most likely possibility that I'm eyeing. Otherwise, just watch these levels just to be safe, and we'll see the direction depending on Powell. I think that Aapl has a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure that's trying to develop. But here's the thing. It's also going to depend on Powell. So if we do have this inverse head and shoulders, we could retrace towards this 184 area, maybe a little bit lower. We have an imbalance at 182.5 as well. Those are going to be your levels to watch for 184, then 182.5 if we lose that. And for resistance, watch 187. If we break above that, going to be looking for a move all the way back up towards 189 or almost up there. So I think Aapl is going to retrace a little bit to at least 184. It could go a little lower, depends on Powell. Then we're going to see some buyers defend it at either 184 or maybe a little bit lower. So look for an inverse head and shoulders like structure. We'll see if Aapl retraces a bit then bounces. So watch that very, very carefully. On top of that, now let's just talk about a couple more tickers before I break down more information about Tesla. As far as Tesla goes, just one more thing. I do want to mention that the 4-hour 20 EMA has been another resistance for it. So we're approaching this resistance right here where Tesla's rejected a couple of times. So it might pop a little bit and come back down. Might see a little retracement on Tesla before it gets bought back up in a sideways day. So we're seeing more evidence of that. Now, on top of this, let's talk about more tickers. For Rivian, in my opinion, it looks like it's trying to rebound a little bit. It might reject off the 20 EMA, come back down towards 5.34, if not 5.25, then bounce. So a little drop then a bounce is what's a real possibility. For SoFi, something very similar could happen. I'm going to be looking for a test of 7.73, maybe even 7.5 again. A little rejection here before it tries to bounce. But overall, the structure could be forming like an inverse head and shoulders. We might consolidate a little bit. So come down, bounce, consolidate, and eventually try to break out. So look for a drop in bounce, sideways price action, and attempts to break out. The Russell 2000 has been stuck between the 50 EMA as resistance at 195.43 and support at 192.6 for the last 2.5 days. So it's been stuck between this range. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose that support. If we're bullish, you want to see it break out. That's going to determine which way it's going to go. As of right now, it's kind of stuck in this range, so it might retrace towards 192.6 and try to bounce, and we'll see which way it breaks. Do we break to the upside or the downside? I'll be watching this range to give us that answer. For Microsoft, I think this might retrace a little bit. We have a doji forming. We might backtest 409 tomorrow morning, maybe even 406.5, but I'm looking more towards 409 at the 5 EMA. Then we might bounce and push back up towards these higher levels. It does look bullish overall. This trend is still bullish. So look for a little retracement and then a bounce after that. I think that's going to most likely happen to Microsoft. The news is also another factor, but that's what technicals are suggesting. For AMD, it's the same thing, same setup as Microsoft basically. So it's bullish overall. It's on a nice uptrend, but it might retrace towards 175, if not 173, within that range, then bounce off that and start pushing higher. So look for a little retracement on AMD and a bounce after that. That's a real possibility. For a couple more things, for the Nasdaq, the Nasdaq is still on a very, very nice uptrend. Looks bullish on the 4 hour. Could it come down a little bit thanks to Powell? Sure it can, but then it might continue higher. This chart still looks bullish. So the Nasdaq suggests we might drop a little bit and bounce and still try to go higher. It still looks bullish to me, which could still drag the market higher. The VIX, in my opinion, is still looking a little weak. So the VIX is at this resistance. It hit resistance at the 200 EMA. Now it's starting to reject. It's starting to lose some momentum. But right now it's indecisive. So it's been going back and forth and back and forth. It's favoring the bears a little bit more. Not the bears, the bulls for the market, the bears for the VIX, if you want to go that route. So it looks to me like it's contracting a little bit. It might trade sideways for an extended period of time, then start dropping. And I do see it looking a little weak. So this suggests the bulls have control over the stock market, and the VIX might actually downtrend for a little bit longer. So watch that carefully. The dollar got a breakout. This thing might try to push a little higher, but watch that 104 resistance. If we reject off that, we could retrace towards 103.69. Are we about to retrace? We'll just have to see, but we're at resistance on the dollar, so be careful. For Coinbase, this looks bullish, the setup, because when you zoom out all the way, we have a potential inverse head and shoulder structure. We have this like left shoulder here. We have a head and a right shoulder forming. Let me just zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. So we have a nice accumulation structure that is developing on this chart, at least for Coinbase, right? It's accumulating. So I think we might get a rejection at first off 129.7. Might reject, come back down, grab liquidity at 127, then come back up, trade sideways temporarily. Then later on, I see it breaking out towards 130. So it might trade sideways and break out later. So watch that very carefully. That's what I'm seeing for Coinbase. For Google, in my opinion, Google's looking bullish. We're about to get a bullish cross on the PPO. Could Powell cause a little retracement? Sure, he can. We could back test, 142 or even 140 again, but I think it's going to break out towards 145 later on. So look for a little retracement and a breakout towards 145, a little drop and a pop. That is most likely what's going to happen. For Amazon, it still looks strong. It's up 7.8% for the day, still holding up. Could it come back down towards 170, very close to the 5 EMA, and then bounce? It sure can. Might retrace just a little bit towards 169 to 170, then bounce after that and trade sideways. But I still think that it might retrace just a little bit and still bounce and hold up after that. So look for a little retracement on Amazon, then sideways price action. And then for Meta, same thing basically. I think Meta, it's up 20% for the day on Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing kind of retraces towards 464 to 465 and it bounces off of that and still holds up for now. But overall, it's still holding up nicely. A little retracement is what you would expect after such a big day before it tries to continue. So watch that very carefully. So my general view of the market is we might see a little pullback. We might pull back just a little bit, a few points on SPY, a little bit on SPX. Then we might see some buyers try to defend. Jerome Powell could cause a little retracement, could even be bigger depending on what he says. I can't really predict that right now. But just to be safe, prepare for a little retracement and see if the buyers step in. We'll be watching that very carefully and we'll do what's very necessary. But with that being said, watch Tesla very carefully. Tesla, in my opinion, is still holding up nicely. You're going to be looking for rejection off very close to this range at the 20 EMA. but then some buyers should defend Tesla later on. So look for a retracement. Tesla might return back to the mid 180s, trade sideways, and I think that's most likely going to happen for tomorrow. And then we'll see if Powell causes anything else. And then once again, don't forget about all the data coming out 15 minutes and 30 minutes after market open tomorrow. So with that being said, thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy the rest of Sunday and what life has to offer. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for the next video. Thank you for listening. We'll react to what Jerome Powell says tomorrow. We'll see how things go. Please take care, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Tesla in the market to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright despite the potential downside that could be coming. And peace out.